Hello, we're here with Irina Dzyubinsky.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So, a weighty topic to begin. Why is attention important, and why specifically in 2023 is it something that all advertisers should be thinking about?
So it's a great question, and I think we as an industry have been trying to answer it at least for a while now. Since I've been in the attention space, prior I was with Oracle Moat, and so attention and engagement is a big topic there. It's something that's been talked about since at least for a decade, right? Like it ebbs and flows, it comes, it goes. It's now hot again.
Hmm.
Why it's important, I think, ultimately is for advertisers. So let's talk about the buy side. For advertisers, it's important because attention is synonymized with engagement. And so if the advertiser believes that it's a gateway to engagement, if the user isn't paying attention, they're not going to engage with the content, they're not going to remember the brand, they're not going to remember the product, and therefore it's not going to lead to an action. So it doesn't generate brand awareness, that isn't going to improve sales, etc. So that's why I think attention is important and why attention is such a hot topic right now. There's a lot of advertising waste and there's a lot of impressions that are wasted. So if you look through the lens of attention and you measure everything to say like what garnered attention, there is a potential to prevent wastage of those impressions, right? Of resources, both monetary as well as the number of impressions that you need to reach a certain audience. And then a competitive advantage. I think it also, for companies that can leverage the tool sets that are out there. Obviously, there's a lot of vendors in the space, both from a deterministic as well as probabilistic, panel-based or impression-based engagement measurement, attention measurement. Advertisers that have honed in on those and have been able to move the needle and really focus on the most engaged audiences, most engaging content, create even creative that they can create that is higher in attention. All of those are competitive advantages for the advertiser. On the sell side, it's also an advantage if a publisher or broadcaster can prove out that their content is more engaging for a certain type of audience, and therefore you as an advertiser of this particular brand are better off with that publisher. And yes, you're going to potentially pay a higher premium, but you're going to get better outcomes because our content is just better from an attention and engagement perspective. One thing that I think is still kind of evolving and more, it's not as and I'm not saying attention is established, so that would be a wrong thing to say, but something that's more unique and more up and coming, and it's an infancy stage, is attention and emotion, right? Because when I pay attention to something, when it really resonates, there is an emotional engagement. And certain measures and certain providers and solution providers in the space, the only thing that is how attention is being approached is from an eye tracking perspective. Eye tracking, unless you're doing facial coding or facial recognition, and you can at least gain some insight into the emotionality of the face, doesn't give you the really, really strongly meaningful engagement signal, and that is emotional impact of what the user is watching. So that to me is one of the things that's still kind of missing in the attention, not necessarily measurement, but in the debate, right? It's like everybody seems to have resoundingly kind of gone down the track and grasped onto the eye tracking mechanism because it's easier right now and it's established and it's been out there. The cognitive measures, I think, are very, very important. So those are the things that are why attention is becoming more and more of a conversational topic. What are the advantages of it? And why advertisers are really both the buy side and the sell side are really in a much heated debate on the topic.
Yeah, that was an excellent answer, and it sort of bring me nicely to the next question, which is how do advertisers make sense of attention, or what do attention providers and everyone in this industry need to corral their attention towards so it's easier for marketers, especially those that are just starting out, to buy into the attention and to start incorporating it in campaigns and all of their marketing?
That's a great question. I think we're ways off standardization. We can't even, as an industry, agree on a definition, in all fairness. And everything as we talk about it, creates even more confusion because we have audio publishers like Spotify, Pandora, we have Amazon Music, things that are advertisers and publishers in its own sense, and everything is driven from the view lens of viewability and eye tracking, right? So how do we serve the marketplace fully in a meaningful way? And I think that's a lot of the standardization right now. We can't have a meaningful conversation on what that standard looks like until we, as an industry, can agree that there is other components that aren't being considered right now as we talk about attention. And what's great as we expand our knowledge, I think a lot of it is education. As we expand our knowledge and understand all the solution providers in the space and what they bring, the best thing we can do is understand the use cases. Use cases from the perspective of, what am I as a marketer, as an advertiser, being new to the space, being a veteran to the space, it doesn't really matter because I feel attention is still more nascent than it should be from that perspective, and from a transactability perspective as well. How do we leverage it? And so education is important, but also understanding your use case. What platform, what's the creative, what's the content, what's the contextual relevance, what's the targeted audience, who are you going to reach the most and where? And then ultimately, what are you trying to drive? Is it brand awareness? Is it ad recall? Is it like the upper funnel, more of the upper funnel measurement? Or are you truly trying to drive conversion, sales? How are you going to tie those conversions to attention, right? And what are the vendors that you're going to use for that? Is it more of a test and learn, like an A/B testing? Are you going to do it more in a controlled environment, like as an experiment? Or do you want a scaled impression level solution because you just need to, throw something at the wall and see what sticks, right? So you're going to leverage different solution providers depending on the use case and depending on how that solution provider is going to solve for that use case. And I want to say scientifically sound way, right? You want to make sure that the methodology is sound, and you want to make sure that the hypothesis that it is proven out. If I'm going to say, like, I play in the space of emotional impact, and I can tell you without doubt that I have predictive modeling to say, I know when channel switching is going to happen based on the emotional curve of the individual, based on what we're measuring, I have to be able to put, foundationally put data behind that and say that that's my hypothesis. Here's how I proved it out. So if you want to understand that people are switching in the middle of your content or switching out of your commercials or whatever, when the channel switching happens, this is why you want to use the provider. If you're more interested in understanding the value of a PMP that, a DSP has put together or an SSP has put together, and you really need impression level data on a mobile device, then it's a different vendor for that, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to play in that space. As a marketer, you need to understand how to navigate this landscape. And there's a lot of confusion. Confusion because there's so much out there, like and who does the better marketing, who does the better sales pitching, right? It's not necessarily who's got the sounder, or I don't even know if that's a word, but we'll go with it. Who has the more sound methodology, who has the better use case provability, right? And then the bigger question for the marketers, who the fuck pays for the attention, right?
Right.
Obviously, the advertisers who benefits from it, if they can also play both on the effectiveness and the efficiency sides, if they can spend less and create an arbitrage of sorts, they can spend less and capture more audience and better results. And then ultimately, they can drive better effectiveness. So with the same amount of spend, they can possibly drive a lot more impact if they know what's being attended to, right?
Right.
So there's that concept. Striking a balance, I think, is important, and targeting, testing, and optimization. So that's and figuring out, again, from the use case of what you're trying to solve as a marketer, who is the best provider or providers, a combination of metrics and measures that are going to give you what you need for your toolbox. It's highly competitive right now, and everybody's kind of like, this is why we're good at this. This is why, Adelaide's attention unit is really good for this. Here's T-Vision's framework. Here's what Realize does. There's just too much. just too much. And it's like, if I were a marketer, I wouldn't know what the hell to do. Is there a way that we create a body, and whether it's the IAB with this attention task force, is it the ARF who's been in this space and kind of putting methodologies and frameworks together for a while now? Or is it another player that comes in and says, let me bring it all together. Let us aggregate all of these metrics, all of this information that's out there, and in a meaningful, predictive, consistent, reliable, scientifically sound way, give you a toolkit, you advertiser, you marketer, to say, here's how you use and leverage and pull the levers of what you need. Here's what works on these platforms. Here's what works for these creatives. Here's what works on short form, on long form, audio, video, digital, right? I mean, we still have digital advertising in terms of like, it's not all TV and CTV, albeit it is still a very big percentage of the ad spend. I think eMarketer predicted by 2026, linear and CTV ad spend is going to be around $106 billion. So it's not a small amount, but that's like, do we have an arbiter of sorts or an aggregator of sorts that kind of brings it into meaning to say, here's your menu. If you need X, Y, Z, A, B, C, here are the metrics and the vendors and the solutions that provide the answers that you are going to be looking for. That's what I think will simplify the equation of attention.
I think you've laid out a very expansive case why, the idea of attention, for a lot of them, it's swimming in their heads. They don't know exactly where to begin. I think you bring up a great point, not only that the traditional industry organizations that are creating attention task force and the upstart organizations that are just focused on attention, one thing would be to participate in that. But what other advice do you have for, say, a brand, a marketer that needs to get their feet wet into attention? Like, what are the first steps to not get overwhelmed and to start the process, so they're not waiting for these things that'll take some time to settle for them to start it at their organization?
So if we're talking about a brand or a creative agency?
I would say a brand. So one of the things could be to sort of task their agencies to come with a recommendation, thinking more of CMOs or a senior marketer that needs to propel the organization forward and start really participating in attention, incorporating it into their marketing strategy.
So I think the number one thing for advertisers or CMOs, let's say, in how to leverage attention or how do they educate themselves in attention is, well, it's going to sound cliche, but embracing AI and ultimately embracing data analytics. And I'm not saying that most advertisers haven't established their analytics and data science units. And obviously agencies have done a lot of investment because, you can't improve something that you can't measure, right? So that's, right. I think it starts there. You really need to understand what kind of content is going to grab and retain your audience's attention. Both from an emotional, not just from an eye tracking, if you're an audio, if you're looking to advertise an audio, you need to understand it from an emotional impact. You need to understand emotional engagement, which is tangential, which is necessary for attention, right? That's what drives engagement, is that emotional connection. So you need to look not just at view duration or click-through rates, right? It depends if you're in digital, but you need to understand from a knowledge-based perspective what is out there, right? Who's measuring what, how they're measuring it. So I think it does start with education. Just kind of immerse yourself to say, okay, what's going to be meaningful to us? Is 80% of our ad spend in TV? If you're 80% of your ad spend is TV, and now CTV is also when you're media planning, most of linear and TV, unless you're buying direct and you're buying against a specific show, it's not, you can leverage CTV. But if 80% of your ad spend is there, it's very, very important to understand channel switching, to understand distraction, to understand inattention. So something could be on the screen not paying attention to. Is it a forced ad experience? Is it skippable ad experience? All of those things are going to impact the metrics that you're leveraging it to understand attention. of your stuff is digital or mobile and things like that, then you need to really understand how you as an advertiser need to define attention for yourself. So I do think there's not one definition of attention. The definition of attention is going to be use case dependent and ultimately predictability, right? Because a lot of the measures that we're talking about when we think about attention, and if we're doing it from an education perspective, obviously there's eye tracking, but not just that, fixations, right? The pupil dilations, the gaze, right? It's like when we're paying attention to something, our eyes are actually moving back and forth as we're registering the information. So things like that. There's the biggest thing is EEG, right? Brainwave activity, if we're doing it from an empirical, like psychological, scientific perspective. A lot of these things aren't scalable. A lot of these things are going to be panel based, like how representative is it? How do you take that and parlay that into at scale through predictive methodology to build predictive models using impression level data or higher scale data? So there's just a lot. It really, really depends on how you want, if you want a neuroscience inspired technique, or are you good with eye tracking? Is it sufficient enough as a proxy for attention? Obviously, there is AI and machine learning for predictive. How do you take a smaller data set and expound it to a larger audience or make it more representative of senses? And ultimately, you have to understand your cross-platform challenges. Mm-hmm. Like what's going to be considered attention on one medium is not necessarily going to gain the same attention on another medium. And so if you're spreading your inventory thin and you're kind of speckling things everywhere, cross-platform challenge is going to be big. So I think when you're just starting out, there needs to be some kind of a focus, and maybe from a test and learn perspective, you hone in on one channel, right? Like you hone in on CTV, TV kind of a thing, or digital, and kind of understand what are the things that you need there versus what are the nuances and the differences that the other medium represents and how you want to tackle attention. And then ultimately privacy concerns, right? You have to be very, very careful that you're not doing things that are, because panel-based, like you have a lot of user information, how that user information is being leveraged, how you're creating your audiences around it, and there's increasing regulation around that. I was going to say, I touched upon this briefly earlier, but contextual relevance. I think one thing, like we talk about contextual intelligence in the scope of brand safety, right? A lot of advertisers don't want to appear around content that's going to damage their reputation, that's going to damage their brand. But the flip side of it, it's very, very important to also, and we have seen that contextual relevance, so the content still being king, it's still really, really important that when you think about attention, you think about tying attention for the ads to the content against, and the audience against what you're going to be putting it against. Very few vendors in the space think about carryover or can measure carryover, right? Because sometimes publishers are really, really hesitant. The sell side is really, really hesitant to transact or to guarantee on attention. They're like, fuck, attention is 100% tied to the creative. If the creative is shit or makes the user angry, they're not going to convert. Why should I have to pay for that? Right? Why should I be on the hook to guarantee some shitty creative that an ad agency put together, and it's not going to carry anything and not going to resonate and not going to gain any attention? But that may be a shitty creative within that content, on that channel, on that network, within that program. It might be a fucking fantastic creative somewhere else with another audience, on another platform against another program. So it's just the question that we also need as an industry to answer is, and again, speaking of guarantees, at some point the publishers were really, really hesitant to guarantee unviewability, right? But they controlled the screen, what's above the fold, what's above. But now we've moved off of digital things and things like that. But eventually we'll get there. As an industry, we will have to guarantee on something more meaningful than like 50% of the pixels for 1 second. But context, content, understanding carryover, like spillover effect. If the content is strong enough and emotionally engaging enough, what we've shown is that the creative matters less. It still matters, but you can gain emotional engagement with a potentially crappy ad or crappy creative if the content preceding it was highly engaging emotionally.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic, and I really appreciate you coming on.
I hope I answered all the questions. I'm sure there's things that are worth a more detailed conversation, and there's a lot of debate and a lot of conversations still to be had. There are a lot of very smart people collaborating and working together. So that's what's nice to see, is it's finally not, you know, a buy side against sell side type of thing, but everybody coming together. We're doing it, I think, through the lens of what's the right thing to do for the industry in a meaningful and measurable way.